My Family Thinks I'm Crazy, a podcast where I, your host, try to give you some tips on how you can explain all this weird, wild, crazy conspiracy stuff to the people you love most. Because that's what I've been trying to do for the past 10 years with no success.
I've been telling everybody that our government is shady, but every time I do, my family thinks I'm crazy. The hollow earth, UFOs, aliens invading, fluoride in the water, they swear skies daily. When I talk about these things, they think I'm crazy. There's no escaping anymore the evil that we're facing. Illuminati mind control, they're sacrificing babies. The end of days, but anyways, my family thinks I'm crazy.
What, they don't want to listen to you?
No, they don't want to listen. They don't want to hear it. They're just like, oh, here we go, Mark. Off again with your...
Mark being Mark again.
Yeah. So, that's the thing about podcasts is when you're on the air, and it's like therapy, If I can't talk to my family about this stuff, I'll talk to you, Matt, and all our listeners.
You'll just tell your whole podcast.
Yeah. So who are we talking about today, Matt?
They think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. My family thinks that I'm crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. I'm your host, Mark Palmer, and on today's episode, we're speaking with a man that you won't find on any other podcast at this present moment in time. This is his first podcast. He's a man who I have known for almost 10 years now, since I was 16 years old. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's extremely proficient in Muay Thai and kickboxing. He's trained for over 25 years and has a professional MMA record of 4 wins and 1 loss, all via submission. With all that being said, he's extremely down to earth, grounded, and humble. He's a man who's taught me many, many things as well as martial arts, a true role model. Enjoy this conversation with my Sifu, Ryan Griffith.
I may have smoked like a few hours before the yoga class, but it was the breath work that we did, the fact that I was closing my eyes and I journeyed to another world. I get humbled tremendously when I go there, but I need that. That's the only way I'm going to get to where I was, and that's the only way I'm going to get to my next step in terms of my progress is to basically eat shit for a while, and that's the cold hard facts of life is if you want to make any progress, you better be ready to fucking pick up a shovel and start digging, just fucking grind it out, and it's aggravating. You're going to be sore and shit like that, but you lick your wounds and you go back for more. I realized, and this is arguable, you can't blame people. They're only the amalgamation of all the things that have happened to them up until that point. I'm not saying you can't blame people. You really can't. Because everybody has their characteristics that they were taught as a child. Some people were fucking abused as children. Some people were abused in a way that is not physically abused. They're mentally abused. Or how about the abuse of just not really being loved the right way? Because when your parents go to work all day and you see them for 3 hours a day and they're just so stressed out about, everyday common things, you don't feel that love from them, and I send them off. You send the kids off to school, you go off to work. It's like, we spent millions of years probably fucking evolving as humans where we probably just sat around a fire. Even like people put so much emphasis on food and eating and stuff like it's great and all, but where we're at as a society, I think if Americans spent the next 2 months not eating, nobody would die. Because we have so much stored up, we have so much abundance that we would, and I'm not saying from a health standpoint, I'm not a fucking doctor or whatever, but we eat too much, we do too many things that are not actually beneficial from us, and we need to withhold from some of these like pleasuristic fucking things, you know, and I fall into it too, because it's like, oh, maybe smoking weed every day all the time is not a fucking good thing, you know, because you take a couple weeks off of smoking weed and you smoke one little puff again, you're like, wow. Per delivery. So they kept sticking me on new routes that I wasn't used to, and then routes in Trumbull where it's like 5 or 10 minutes between stops. So if you could only make 5 stops in a fucking hour, you're only making $5 an hour, you know? Like,
Yeah.
So it was just getting to the point after about a month of doing it, I was calculating what it's going to be in my head, and I'm like, I'm busting my ass, like, you're driving all around, and it's dangerous to drive in the first place, and let alone you're driving one of these trucks where you either got to pull down somebody's narrow driveway and try to back out again into traffic, or leave yourself exposed like on the side of the street when you're in the back getting boxes. If your truck gets hit, you're fucked, man. You know, so it's just too dangerous.
I had a buddy who I worked with. He was delivering, same company as me. I got him the job, and one day he like calls me up. He's like, "Bro, I torched my van." I'm like, "What do you mean you torched your van?" He's like, "I got stuck. I tried to put leaves, you know, there's leaves I was stuck in. I tried to use the boxes to like give myself traction to get out. He caused a fire with the amount of friction, and the whole van just went boom." So he actually ended up suing, you know, the company that hired him. It wasn't Amazon, it was a different like logistics distributor, whatever, that we both worked for. And I think he made some money in a settlement from that, because, you know, he was in a risky situation. It wasn't really his fault, and nobody trained him. They don't train anybody, dude. I'm sure you've seen the Amazon. That's why I quit. It just got to, you know, and we'll talk about, you know, maybe COVID if you're interested in getting into some of that. Man. But that was a big part of why I fucking quit too, because every day I would show up to load up my truck, and they would, you know, make me wear a mask in the facility, outside of the facility while I'm loading the van, and then they're testing our temperature every morning to see if I'm like, fuck this, I'm out of here. And then basically, you know, I had been kind of listening to podcasts so much during that job that like I got super involved, in the sense of like I listened to every episode of this one podcast, Tinfoil Hat. And Sam Tripoli, he's a comedian. He was doing a show in New York City. So I'm like, you know, huge fan of his. I go and see him, and I give him this book. And it's so funny how it connects, because I would have never really gone down this trail if it wasn't for you, because you introduced me to Rosie back in the day, and Adam Wall too gave me all these old books when we were moving him out of that place you rented to him. He gave me all these old books that he didn't want anymore. And dude, I mean, you could see how many books are behind me. Like, I never stopped. I just kept buying books and learning about this stuff, you know? And we talked about that kind of stuff back in the day. But yeah, it's funny. So I gave Sam a book. He remembered me, had me on his show, and then had me on again, and then eventually asked me to work for him, which was really cool. And that was around the same time I'm like, all right, fuck this, I'm quitting Amazon. And then I started my own show and self-employed, getting down to the things that I've always wanted to talk about. But like, the name of my podcast is My Family Thinks I'm Crazy, because I've always wanted to talk about this stuff, and people are like, what do you know, like, you're wasting your time, conspiracy theories aren't real, like all of the doubts, you know, were in my way, and really you know, disempowered me until now. And now I'm like, no, I'm going to talk about this stuff. And there's so many people that have just like really responded to the show. So I'm like, well, you know, I'm doing it more and more. But
that's awesome, man. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. So that's just to bring you up to speed on why I'm doing this now at the podcast thing. And
it's fucking great, man. I think there's no better medium, man, that you can find where you're really able to like hear somebody's insight. I like the long format of it because you can't watch 5-10 minute videos and understand certain things. It needs dialogue. You need to see dialogue between people, because when you just hear one person saying, oh, this is what happened, da, da, da. But when you have another person who's like countering them and say, oh, well, what about this? And then it kind of reels them back into reality a little bit, I've always been good at like doing that with myself when I am talking to somebody else. Because when you're on your own, you're free to think whatever you want. There's nobody to keep you in check. As soon as you open your mouth, you're like, I better think about what I say before I say it, because I'm going to have to explain it. And if I can't explain it, then it's probably not true, or it's not a valid point, Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm sure you felt that growing up with like 4 brothers, that's a challenge. I grew up as, the oldest of 2, just me and my younger sister. So I never really had that brotherly aspect, that conflict. And that's a big reason why I sought out A1 martial arts. That's why I came to your dojo in the first place, and that's how we met. And we're just gonna roll right into it, dude. Welcome to the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. For those who don't know, this is my Sifu, formerly my Sifu, and his name is Ryan Griffith. He is the former owner of A1 Martial Arts. We're going to get into what's happened since, because I know with the 2019, 2020 bullshit, a lot of small businesses took a big hurt. And, I think it's a plandemic. I'd love to give you an opportunity to express yourself freely on that and what happened there and what you're going to do moving forward as a, martial artist, someone who's dedicated their life to training their body and their mind and their soul even. I remember having many deep conversations with you, Ryan, that pushed me to be a better person, pushed me to, expand what I was capable of. And yeah, I really owe you a lot. So thank you for being here, man. And tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, man. My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I've always appreciated your determination and just having you around. Always were a great guy for me, man. And, I was lucky to have the opportunities that I did. I don't know if it's luck or just determination, but I found myself running my own school. And for a while I was doing pro MMA fighting, and I just love the training aspect of it. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu and another style. It's a mixed style martial arts, but I was never really somebody who would tout myself, I'm a black belt or anything like that. I just love getting my hands dirty and training with people because you learn so much about somebody. And I think so many of these words, and I'm going to use my words, but they can be so superficial and so hard to understand because we all have certain slightly different definitions for each particular word. But when it comes to the physical body and somebody throwing a punch at you, it's very easy to understand, So there's this rawness about being able to understand somebody through the physical action. And words are out the window. And I think that's a truer, deeper connection with somebody. And, when we're training with each other, we're not trying to hurt each other, but we're trying to give a look like we're trying to hurt. So we're trying to stay sharp, but not out of control. And then there's a fine line there. And I appreciate that nuanced aspect of being able to like savagely simulate destroy somebody and then yet still have that be able to translate if you did have to use it in a real fight, And I pray to God that, none of my training partners or myself ever have to use it on somebody, because it's going to be a bad day who's on the receiving end of those, the devastating martial arts tactics. But yeah, man, I'm all yours. And any questions you got, I'm happy to share. And, let's do it.
Yeah, right on, dude. Thank you for being here again. And yeah, I can tell the audience, I've been on the bad end of many of those destruction, Ryan's a hell of a fighter and just really pushed me, in all aspects. I'm more of a stand-up guy. I always loved punching and kicking, but I got into wrestling, and, you were somebody who really taught me how to keep the ground game where I wanted it, and actually, have the ability to transition as a really tall guy, you know, getting thrown on your back, getting put on your back, it's like, oh shit, you know, what am I going to do now? But when you're able to work off your back, you know, the secrets of jiu-jitsu, guard. I remember triangle choke was one of my favorites. I actually learned how to like use these long legs, you know, for the better. But yeah, I haven't really talked much about martial arts on the podcast because it is kind of visual, you know, but maybe we can get into like who you were before you found martial arts and why, you know, you gravitated towards it at a young age. And when did you start? You know, obviously with 4 brothers, you probably were getting into fights just kind of like growing up with your brothers, you know, messing around and rumbling. But what was the primary motivation? You know, obviously.
Well, I've always been like a smaller kind of guy. And even as a kid, you know, I was always like hanging out with older kids and stuff, you know, and fortunately for me, I always get along with everybody and I'm pretty like passive and easy going in that, you know, I don't start trouble. If somebody is starting trouble, I'm really good at like squashing it and making it not an issue or whatever. But in the back of my mind, I always had this fear that, oh, if somebody did want to mess me up, man, I don't have the size. You know, and when I was a kid, I liked all sports. I was into wrestling. I just loved watching them smash the hell out of each other. My mom would say, why are you watching that crap? It's fake. I'm like, it's not fake. Look at these guys. They're hitting each other. This guy's bleeding. And, you know, I'd argue with her. I was like 8 years old or whatever. I didn't know. And then, you know, I liked army and military, things like that. So I was really into learning how to gain power through that dominance, being able to dominate somebody else and be strengthened that way. So I knew I wasn't really going to be a big guy or anything like that. So I had to, and then I was intrigued by martial arts because there's this mystique around martial arts where even these little guys can take on somebody way bigger, way stronger, way faster, doesn't matter. You know, so in my mind, that was always this magical element to it. And when I found out that wrestling was not real, and when I say wrestling, I mean like Hulk Hogan wrestling, not like wrestling, like college wrestling or high school wrestling. So when I found out that was fake, I turned my back on it, basically. I was like, nah, I only want to like learn real stuff that works in a real fight. So when I was around 15 years old, I found my first instructor he's a really awesome dude, a bit of a sage. He was into dabbling in different styles and taking what was good from each style. Because although all styles are better than no style, certain styles are not really that effective for real life self-defense. And I didn't want to waste my time with anything that was fancy or ineffective. I just wanted the simple and effective ways to, you know, get myself out of a crappy situation. So I trained with him for about 4 or 5 years, and he actually introduced me to another martial artist who was a little more adept in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aspect of it and the Muay Thai aspect. And those two styles I've mostly been attracted to and trained in because they're very, very proven styles that even put them up against other styles and they've stood the test of time. And probably 95% of what you'll see in an MMA fight is Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I've been attracted to those styles. And then, you know, so I trained with that guy for a while. And he did a lot of Jeet Kune Do as well, which is Bruce Lee's style. And he didn't want anybody to call it a style because you're supposed to be flowing seamlessly through stuff. So it was always just very fascinating to me. And I always liked it. I always felt like I was good at it for some reason. Maybe I just had good coaches who are like, even if I suck, they're like, oh, great job. And I feel like I'm doing great or whatever, you know. But I've been fortunate to have had that journey because not everybody has that. When I first started, my mother was happy that I was doing it. So she offered to pay for my classes. I was like, this is great. And then finally I was like, I don't want you to pay anymore. And at that point, my instructor was ready to hire me and have me start teaching for him. So I started making money doing it. And I don't think I would have been as deeply immersed as I've become had it not been for that instructor sort of manipulating me in some ways to teach for him. Because he probably saw a spark in me that he knew I was capable of doing something great with it and inspiring others through it. But I didn't see it at the time. I was like, I don't really like doing it, because part of me was like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing in the first place. Why are you sending me to teach other people, But I knew enough, I knew more than they knew, so I was certainly enough, and, picked up more throughout the years. And like I say, man, I'm so blessed and so lucky to have had the opportunity to train as much as I did. And, I stalled out a little bit with the last year or so, just trying to get everything in order since I lost the business, just trying to find what my path is, and I've done a good job in shifting gears and making things. There's a huge gap in my heart from not having that aspect of it. But in other ways, I'm sort of free to rebirth myself and decide what path. Because when you do something, you do it over and over and over, you get so stuck in that groove of doing it. I never could have imagined there would be anything that would have got me out of that groove, but when it came, I was like, all right, this is it. This is my sort of opportunity to find myself again, and I do have to get back to training, back to work. And, I don't want to call it work. It's in some ways so aggravating, because when I go there and I get to my school, I train at Fabio Ruggio's school. It's a Carl St. Gracie jiu-jitsu school. But I go there and I get fucking wrecked, man. Because I don't go as much as some of these guys are going. And not everybody wrecks me, but, I get humbled tremendously when I go there, but I need that. That's the only way I'm going to get to where I was, and that's the only way I'm going to get to my next step in terms of my progress, is to basically eat shit for a while, and that's the cold hard facts of life. Is if you want to make any progress, you better be ready to fucking pick up a shovel and start digging, just fucking grind it out, and it's aggravating. You're going to be sore and shit like that, but you lick your wounds and you go back for more.
And man, you're bringing so many memories back, because that's how it is. You get a full head of steam and you think, oh, I threw those punches so hard yesterday, and then somebody humbles you and you realize, okay, there's something else that needs to be done, something else to improve upon. And even someone like yourself, who's taught so many people and given me the opportunity to be a teacher, because you did the same thing for me, man. And that was huge, really. I don't remember quite if it was, something you saw in me, because I definitely, feel like to teach people now, but, it was a big pivotal moment in who I've become, having that opportunity that you gave me to teach other students and teach younger kids and help them grow and improve. When I got into martial arts, it was like right around UFC kind of hitting its like fame, The Ultimate Fighter had probably been in its like second season or something like that. So it was like UFC was huge, and I was 15 years old and getting into fights around school and outside of school for whatever reason, just being, trying to be a class clown, trying to find myself, but then running into kids that were like rough and wanted to cause trouble, and just, also having kind of the integrity to not get picked on. I fought back. And I quickly realized that, this is something that you need to be skilled at if you want to accomplish anything or have a sense of security, really, is what I think it really helped me gain, because there was a tremendous amount of insecurity in my life at that time. And it just strengthened parts of my inner self. And I didn't realize that's what was happening, because when you look at martial arts, it's so outward at first that actually doing it, actually going into the process and training, you realize, oh, I'm really training my inner, the mind, the soul, the finer aspects of who I am. And to learn that part about Jeet Kune Do, your teacher kind of giving you that gem, so to speak, that was huge for me. Bruce Lee's work, I have his book still, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. And I've always kind of expressed that when people ask me like, oh, you do martial arts, what do you do? I would just say, well, I'm more of a student of Jeet Kune Do. Like, I don't have a style. I just do what works for me because, I'm taller than the average guy, and I'm very skinny. It's like there's a certain set of movements that worked for my body type, and maybe wrestling, just being a wrestler wouldn't have been the right fit, but then learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from you and Muay Thai as well, American kickboxing kind of stuff. It was pivotal, man. It was huge. So yeah, to ask you a little deeper, like, what do you remember from those times when we met? Do you remember? Because I remember it was like down on the Post Road. That was the first shop you had, the first dojo, and then you moved into the one over by Christmas Tree Shop there. And that's when I started working for you. I think I was like maybe a junior in high school around then.
Sounds about right. Yeah. I what keeps coming up to me is I think probably the whole 15 years that I was in business on my own, there's a certain amount of desperation. But just in that, I never really found this financial success. I was successful in every aspect except financial. Financially, I was always just scraping by, just barely enough to make the rent payment. And then, I was nervous if the next month I was going to have enough. And, sometimes it'd be like late payment and I'd start to fall behind. But I was always falling behind on that side of it. And that created a lot of just tension and a lot of unrest for myself that I was like, I found my passion in life, but I'm so close to losing it, And then I started to realize the only one to blame, because I always wanted to blame other things, like, it's because I don't have a good location, or it's because all these different reasons this person quit on me. That's my own fucking fault. They say if I could kick in the pants the person most responsible for all my problems, I wouldn't sit for a week. I think it's like Teddy Roosevelt said that, or one of the Roosevelts. Nonetheless, there's a certain amount of, I remember from that time in particular, desperation, because I was so desperate to not lose what I had, to keep what I had, and keep on that path of following my dream. And I didn't have enough financially to make it, but I was making it work. I always somehow fucking pulled off a miracle. It was like month after month, miracle after miracle after. And every time it felt like I was climbing up this hill and I could see the precipice. I could see the top where I felt like it was about to start to either level off or come downhill. But it's like every time I got to that point where I thought I was going to be able to see either flat or downhill, I saw another fucking hill to climb, and I climb and I climb, and it happened. It was like that for like freaking 10 years of my life. Just absolute, like I said, just desperation. I was desperate to not be so close to losing my dream, and it just followed me the whole fucking time. And I'm sure there are certain choices that I could have made that would have put me in a better spot, that I wouldn't be so financially, risky. But it just seemed like I was never able to, I had like 5 or 10 different types of things I was doing within that business that if I had 7 of them doing all good at all at once, I would have been fucking tons of money. But it always turned out to be like 3 out of those 7 things are doing good. The other 4 might even be losing me money, So, and I was never afraid to try a new thing to see what's working, and I never wanted to tell anybody no. Somebody would come and say, hey, I want to start classes in your gym. What do you think? Oh, boxing coach. Yeah, let's do it, man. Yeah, let's do it. Let's make time for you. And, I tried a lot of different things, and most of them failed, but looking back, I'm not ever going to kick myself because I took too many chances or whatever. No, I made the best possible choice at the moment that I thought was going to work for me, and it didn't work out, whatever, but if I had stuck to those 3 things that were working for me instead of trying all these different other things, I'd be in a different spot, but it is what it is,
Well, I gotta say, if you can take solace in something, it's the people who were there who did benefit from who you are and what you brought and the positive energy you had every week, dude. I mean, people who don't know, this guy did like class after class after class after class, and you went from Zumba to, dancing this way, and then you would have the kids, and then you would, do martial arts with the big guys, and the teenage, you were 6-7 hours in a day, nonstop, man. And that's a lot for what you were doing. And your body showed too. I mean, you were definitely someone to look up to in that sense. Like you were ripped. You probably still are. I can't tell because you're wearing a sweatshirt, but but either way, bro, I mean, you're such a huge inspiration, and I'm 100% about accountability and taking responsibility. So it's humbling to hear you say that, and I understand, man, that's tough. But I gotta ask you, in that vein of blaming, obviously we don't want to blame other people, but can you at least blame society to some extent? Because like our Western society, it doesn't encourage what you do, man, and that's so sad, and I think especially young men, women too, but young men can benefit so much from having that practice in their life. I certainly did. I wouldn't be where I am today without what I learned from you. Seriously. And and that's not to say much. Like I'm not like, the head of a Fortune 500 company, but I have honor. I have integrity. I stand up for people who need help. And that's what humanity needs. And those are some of the lessons that you taught. So I'm wondering, like, in that vein, like, do you ever think like, if only I was in China, like I could have, or something like that. Like, what are your thoughts when it comes to martial arts place in our Western society?
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm sad. I'm sad in many ways. And that same sentiment that followed me, that kind of desperation for, success, and I kept falling back on the fact that people don't appreciate that type of business enough. They don't appreciate it. And I could have done more to hunt people down and be like, oh, are you coming tonight? Oh, how come you didn't come yesterday? And all that. I never wanted to do that, because to really have a real moment, you don't want to pressure somebody to do that stuff. To have those real moments that we had, it was just like, hey, here's my schedule. I'd love it if you came to all these. You might not, whatever. And I'll be so happy when I do see that you did come, but don't expect me to give you reminders that I want you to come. It's like, I don't want to overdo it and put that pressure on people like, oh, I don't call people out. When they don't show up, it's not on me. That's on you. You don't expect that I feel bad about it, but it turns out I did feel a little bad about it. I did feel bad because as a coach, I wasn't doing my job to lay into people, to put that pressure on. And maybe I wasn't ready for that in my life. Maybe I just had too many other things that I was trying to make work and all at the same time. But I want to say that I was disappointed that I didn't do better as a business, because I didn't have that overwhelming support of people. Oh, I'm going to bring 5 friends tomorrow. Oh, I'm going to bring friends. Yeah, I'm still coming. You know what I mean? It's like people would flake off, and I would just let them go. I wouldn't even call them because, after a week of them not being there, fine, a call would have been okay, I guess. But then, spend so much time doing all the other things to make the business right. I wasn't doing that. That was probably the most important thing, to keep people on board, to keep them interested, let them know I do miss them. I do want them to come back. And then, if somebody hadn't been there for a week, I didn't want to call them, because there's some chance they'd be like, listen, hey, bad news. I got to take some time off. And me calling them sparked that. You know what I mean? I could have just sat back and waited for them to call. Or whatever, but I didn't like to charge people for months they weren't coming, it just didn't seem right to me, so half the time if they were paying, I just wouldn't want to call them, because I didn't want to like get to that conversation of them telling me they got to stop for whatever reason, and in my mind, there's some like negative stuff that would come out too. Like, oh, maybe I'm not a great coach, or maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I was too forceful in class, or maybe I didn't show them enough concern or whatever, You play devil's advocate with all these things that it could be. It could be 15 different reasons. But yeah, I guess that's, if I could do it all over again, I'd probably ask people to do more for me in terms of that. Be more accountable. You're not allowed to quit. I'll fucking hunt you down, and adults are so flaky. Kids are fine because it's the adults that are making the choice for them to stay in. The parents are bringing them, the parents are paying for them. And, kids' interest in it fluctuates for a while. They're like real into it. And then they might have a couple bad days in a row where they're not getting something, or they're not going through the belts the way they wanted to. And then they get discouraged. And then once the kid is discouraged, the parents are like, oh, I'm having a hard time getting the kid to want to go again, And I'm like, geez, I don't fucking know. It's martial arts. It's not the easiest thing in the world. We try to make it fun, and we try to keep them motivated. But at the end of the day, you're kind of grinding it out, But adults are a lot better at like flaking off and just being like, oh, yeah, I went away last week, and this week is not good for me because I got my reunion and whatever, But yeah, definitely been an interesting experience. I'm thankful for every student I've ever had, even the ones that gave me a hard time and stuff like that. They teach you a lot about yourself, And I think one of the things that I've learned most about being a martial arts instructor is patience. When you try to fucking force somebody, they put up resistance, and then it's harder to teach them because now they're like anxious, like, oh, is he going to yell at me again and shit? And I never really like yelled at people or anything like that. I always tried to make it like inspiring and motivating, but I'm not mad at you. I'm never fucking be mad at you. People are themselves, and I would never blame anybody for the way they are. I just try to understand them, be compassionate with them, side with them, and give them a vow of confidence. It's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Whatever. It's all good. I love you. I love you either way,
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely am guilty of the flaking. I mean, around 20, 21, 22, around that age, I probably completely flaked on it, and things happened in my life. I broke my wrist, and that became the excuse, oh, I can't do martial arts. I broke my wrist. I got a plate in my wrist. Oh no, I'm going to hurt my wrist. This thought just infected my mind, and it bothers me because since then my relationship with martial arts is pretty minimal, but yeah, man, guilty of that. And it bothers me, but moving forward, I want to do it. I really want to make martial arts a regular practice in my life because I realize, how much it's gotten me to where I'm at, and I have moments weekly, it seems, where, especially nowadays, I get put in a spot where I'm really frustrated with people. I was in a grocery store yesterday without a mask on, God forbid, and I was in, New Haven, and it's against their city policy as of right now. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they threw me out, and they threw me and my girlfriend out, and we put up a fight, in the sense of like I was really frustrated, I'm thinking like, we're just trying to get food. Like, what's the big deal? 99.8% survivability. Fauci's an asshole. All the things came to my mind, and I'm just like, this is not who I am. I'm not the type of person that goes and yells at people, but I'm being pushed past my boundaries. And what it's really making me realize is I need to get back to center and who I am, because that like inner fire is coming out, but it's in the wrong way. I developed that inner fire through martial arts, and I can't, be irresponsible with that. I wonder what your thoughts are.
My thoughts are, call to action for you. Now's the time. You got an audience. I figure the most accountability I've ever had. And it's hard to say, I'm going to do this. You said you wanted to, but you didn't say you were going to. So, you know, I think for your audience that's listening, if you were to speak those words that said you're going to start back up again, help you find a school. I'd love it if you trained at the school that I trained with under my instructor. I think you'll fucking get tremendous benefit from that, you know. And there's a couple other schools you could explore too. My buddy Alberto just opened up. He's one of Fabio's black belts as well. He just opened up in Orange. What town are you in? You in Milford?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can, you know, explore that, but I think.
No, I'm going to do it, Ryan. I'll say it.
Right.
I'll say it, and I'll be accountable. Yes. And people listening know right now, because yeah, dude, it's something that I've been putting off, and that's why I wanted to do this with you, because you're a mentor, and there have been mentors that have come into my life, and if you don't seek those out or at least be receptive, you know, and I'm speaking to the people out there, not you, you know, you have to be receptive to that sort of relationship. Otherwise you might miss out on some pivotal lessons that are waiting for you. And so many people, you know, they're interested in the show because of synchronicity, right? That's a big theme that comes up a lot. And I think, you know, synchronicity works for me, but it's because I've put in a lot of work, you know, and I wonder if martial arts had a larger effect than I think, because for 3 years of my life, that's all I cared about. I did it like every day. It was a huge part of who I was. You put that amount of dedication into anything, you're going to see results. Yeah. So I wonder, you know, on the spiritual side of things, you mentioned your teacher being in that kind of mystical martial arts, kind of had that appeal. Jeet Kune Do obviously has that appeal, but has there been anything, you know, like that's come from that, you know, like what
yeah, man.
I mean,
I don't know if you get this, but just now it happened as you're bringing it up. Like you get the goosebumps and you get the fucking chill down your spine and that kind of thing. That happens to me a lot, man. When I start to think my greater purpose, what I've been through, all my struggles, all my efforts, the countless times you do something without a reward, without anybody recognizing or anything like that. And you're just like, it don't fucking matter if anybody sees me doing what I'm doing. I'm doing it for the right reasons. Whereas today with the social media kind of stuff, people do things partly because they want to put a nice picture up on their fucking and get credit, and they want attention and stuff like that. And, as much as I'm drawn to that, and I'd love to fucking have attention too. I'd love to have people be like, good job, man. Wow, you're really this and you're really that. At the end of the day, that shit doesn't really fucking matter. There's more important things. We have to get to the heart of what the most important thing. And I think most people are so involved in their everyday lives, they forget to do good for themselves. And when I say do good for themselves, I'm not talking about buy themselves ice cream and get themselves a new fucking gaming system and shit like that. No, things that they're really going to benefit from themselves and spend time investing in themselves. And that's what martial arts does for you. There's nobody else in the room when you're practicing. Well, you practice with your partner. You can help your partners out too. But generally speaking, when you're in a martial arts class, the one who benefits the most is you. You know, and we're not spending time doing things that actually benefit us. We're working a job to get a car, to do all these things that are superficial kind of nonsense bullshit things. When it really comes down to it, the things that matter most, and I'm not saying those things aren't important, and they can be important, but to teach somebody that those are not the most important. What's the most important thing in people's lives? They're like, well, I got a job. No. Your fucking health, your survival is the most important thing. You being able to love yourself before you could love other people. And most people, they're good at loving other people and their spouses and their family, but they don't know how to love the average person. When you see me driving, like waving to people, go ahead, you know, I just try to be the most fucking like Buddhist monk out there, the most calm guy out there. You'll never see me get mad at. I mean, I can do it, but it's not very likely. I mean, it would take a lot to get me aggravated in a public setting, you know, because I realize, and this is arguable, you can't blame people. They're only the amalgamation of all the things that have happened to them up until that point. I'm not saying you can't blame people. You really can't, because everybody has their characteristics that they were taught as a child. Some people were fucking abused as children. Some people were abused in a way that is not physically abused. They're mentally abused. Or how about the abuse of just not really being loved the right way? Because when your parents go to work all day and you see them for 3 hours a day and they're just so stressed out about, everyday common things, you don't feel that love from them, and send them off. You send the kids off to school, you go off to work. It's like, we spent millions of years probably fucking evolving as humans where we probably just sat around a fire. Even like people put so much emphasis on food and eating and stuff like it's great and all, but where we're at as a society, I think if Americans spent the next 2 months not eating, nobody would die, because we have so much stored up. We have so much abundance that we would, and I'm not saying from a health standpoint, I'm not a fucking doctor or whatever, but we eat too much. We do too many things that are not actually beneficial from us, and we need to withhold from some of these like pleasuristic fucking things, and I fall into it too, because it's like, maybe smoking weed every day all the time is not a fucking good thing, because you take a couple weeks off of smoking weed and you smoke one little puff again, you're like, wow, this is how I used to feel before I smoked every. I'm not saying it's not great to smoke weed, there's nothing wrong with it, but we're just so indulgent in these things that are not really good for us, For example, like sugar. And sugar is in all of our fucking foods, but and our dietary habits are so terrible, and it's like the second leading cause of death is heart disease. So the truth of the matter is we're being poisoned slowly over time by guess who? Fucking ourselves. It falls back to if I could kick in the pants, the person most responsible for all my troubles, I wouldn't sit for a week, but I can't totally blame myself, and I can't totally put the blame on us, because we were just dropped here. We're just put in this society, and I have a hard time, I don't really know where I stand in terms of politics. If I'm on the left, I'm on the right, or I'm in the middle, or I think they're both shitty, because people fight for capitalism. They say, capitalism is going to be the greatest thing that could ever happen to a society. I'll say yes, because you're free to be an entrepreneur and do what you think is greatest, but there's no moral code involved in running a business. There's no ethics. 99% of the businesses out there, their number one job is not to provide you with your service. No, their number one job is to make money. So they're going to fall short in terms of giving you something that's actually valuable for you. And they're not concerned about that. They're just concerned about making money. They'll tell you otherwise. But so we're in a tough spot where we have the freedom to do whatever we want, but we don't have the willpower. We don't have the moral standards. We don't have the emphasis on value to navigate this unscathed. So, we're all suffering because of it, And as much as I'm not a religious person at all, we need that type of element back in our life that's like, hey, man, listen, it's a simple recipe. All these things are true. Whether or not you believe in God, following these values will help you enjoy your life. It will help your family and your friends have a much better life if you just follow these standards, And I had a hard time with religion, because I was like, listen, if I live my whole life as a saint, the only sin I have is I don't believe in God. Only because I was created by God, and God told me to search for the right evidence to prove my belief. If I'm going to believe in something so wholeheartedly, I need more evidence than a Bible, than a book, And the truth stands that when you do follow the principles of most Bibles, your life is going to be better, But I was turned off because they said, if you just do all the things to live your life as a saint, but the only one thing you don't do is you don't believe in God, you're still going to hell. I said, that's fucking bullshit, man. I said, if I'm going to live my life as a saint, except in my mind, I don't believe in God, and you're sending me to hell because of that? I said, that's terrible. Come on, get out of here. But nonetheless, I think there's tremendous value in people learning the values of it. And yeah, you don't have to believe in God or anything like that, but you just understand the stories and the lessons of interpersonal relationships and how to treat other people. And we do need a sort of a rule book, because there was a while where I was just like, yeah, fuck, do whatever feels good, man. And it just led to a time of my life where I was just too indulgent, drinking and stuff like that. Just didn't really have a good grasp on my willpower to withhold from certain pleasuristic, hedonistic things that I thought, like, you can't get enough of. Oh, there's nothing wrong with sleeping around. Oh, now I know different, because you tarnish the spirit of the person that you let down. Because if you go with a girl, she's usually under the impression that you're interested or on a deeper level than just sex. And you can find ways to be with a woman and convince her to be with you for just that moment. And then after the fact, if you don't follow up and have that relationship, you've not lifted this woman up. You've brought her down. Jesse Lee Peterson calls you a slut maker. So, and I learned that that's what I was doing. I was just, instead of what I thought was, I want to make a woman feel good by giving her attention and pleasuring her, I thought it would do good. It only would have done good if I made a lifelong promise to each of these women, and fulfilled it. But instead, I did the here and now thing of let's seal the deal. And then I wasn't in it for the long haul. And the woman will realize I wasn't in it for the long haul. And I just, for one reason or another, I rejected her. So instead of lifting the woman up, I actually brought her down a little bit, I don't want to say that's 100% accurate in all cases for every woman I've shared time with, but for the most part, that's where I was at. And I wasn't even necessarily after seeking a woman's comfort because I wanted sex. The only reason I wanted sex is because I wanted to be able to show her off to my friends. Yo, look at this hot, beautiful woman that I'm now with. She lets me do whatever I want with her and stuff like that. And that was me chasing to fulfill my egoistic tendencies to make myself look like some fucking great god or something like that. Like, wow, Ryan is fucking something else, So it's just, I learned that those types of things seem right in the moment and they feel good, but you're sometimes better off withholding. Interesting.
Yeah, man. I agree with you 100%. I think I'm going through it in a way, with the indulgence side of things. I mean, daily smoker, not shy to talk about it, and
yeah.
I'm really lucky to say that, as far as relationships goes, I have a steady girlfriend for the first time in my life, and I'm honoring that, and I hope to continue to honor that, because I find so much value in that sort of relationship, rather than, being like, the guy who just goes all over the place. And, with a podcast, you'd think, oh, okay, he's cool, give him some attention. And that definitely helped me, attract her. But I wasn't going to tarnish her and just like, and I'm really glad you brought that up. But to go back to something you said earlier, that really, I remember learning this from you, and it changed my life. The idea that, your enemies are not anything more than just another human being just like you. You have these enemies, and they can become like mythic figures in your mind, like, no, this person's bad and I need to stop them, But when you break it down, like, no, man, they're just a result of all the things that have happened to them in their life. Just like all the things that have happened to you created you and put you where you are right now. And I think that's so important for people to at least resonate with in some way, maybe only hearing it for the first time, but really let that sink in. 'Cause I've been changed, big big time from understanding that. And I'm glad I'm being reminded of it now, because I need to have that same patience for people who, you know, come at me for not agreeing with this medical malpractice, you know, stuff that we're being faced with right now when it comes to the masks, when it comes to the intravenous manipulation, you know, all these different routes. As someone who's led such a, you know, trailblazing life, Ryan, you know, you are like you're a trailblazer, dude. You know, you take your health into your hands, and you're, like you said, responsible for that. So, you know, what is, you know, this time we're in now, like, how are you feeling about health and wellness with everything that we're hearing in the news daily, blah, 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 you know, this and that? I mean, I'm sure you're not happy about it.
Man, I don't know where to start. Let me just plug in my phone real quick. Yo, man, it's like, how old are you, Mark?
I just turned 27 last week.
27. So you probably don't really remember 9/11.
Vaguely, I remember they brought us into the library and they showed us it on the TV, and then for years I was like, yeah, oh yeah, it was second grade, and they brought us into the library like, oh, something's going on, it's an emergency, and we all sat in the library and watched it on TV. You know, I don't know if it was live or if it was like the second tower or whatever, but yeah, and then we went home early. And yeah, man, I mean, I'm sure we talked about conspiracies when I was a student of yours, but like, yeah, that was a big moment for me, and kind of unraveling like maybe the programming that would have been set in at that young age. But yeah, 9/11.
Well, and that's the reason I bring it up, is because it just reminds me so much of how that moment, that day, is clear, like pre 9/11, post 9/11. Is it clear, like, things are different now? You know, police officers and stuff, and we were one.
Hold on, Ryan.
Yeah.
Do I sound different? Because right now, maybe it's because you plugged your phone in. It sounds a little different. Why, is your phone about to die? No, hold on. Try again. No, maybe it's the connection. Here, I'll pause.
Going again.
Cool. So we'll start from the point about 9/11 and why you brought that up, because I can edit, and we don't do the video. I don't publish the video or anything. I just wanted us to be able to have a face-to-face conversation, you know?
Yeah, brother. Appreciate it. Yeah, so 9/11 was this moment in time where you clearly remember what it was like before 9/11, and after 9/11 was totally different in some ways. You know, we seemed to like come together, because we're like, yo, fuck these terrorists, man. Fuck, we're going to go fuck those dudes up, you know? And it slowly faded. But still we're like on edge, like, oh, are they coming back? Are they you know what I mean? And I feel like that was in some ways a manufactured by whoever. I don't fucking know who did it, why they did it, but I feel like it was done to get us all to say, yes, we need to go to fucking Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, wherever the fuck we need to go to kill these motherfuckers. Before that, we don't care about fucking any country. Who cares? Whatever. Let them fucking do what they want to do. But there must have been a reason why they wanted us, you know, to all be collectively saying, yes, go get them. And that's how it was for a while, you know? And after like 5-10 years, guys like Luke Radowski and a bunch of other guys were starting to like read between the lines and figure out what actually happened that day. And there's so many fucking questions and so many unanswered, you know, bizarre occurrences that happened that day that makes you scratch your head, and like these moments in history that just can't be explained, you know, or they've been explained and most people accept the explained answer, but people like you and me are like, something doesn't sound right, you know, and we search for the truth, you know, and I feel like, unfortunately now, the truth that from 9/11, the further away we get from it, the harder it is to find that truth, you know. So unfortunately, we're swimming against the tide. And I think the same thing is happening with COVID now. We've had so many things thrown at us that just for us to try to get to the truth of one of those aspects, we're never going to fucking do it. And I hate to be so like deterministic and that it's negative or anything like that, but it just seems to me that it's sort of the reality of it. And, you know, this COVID stuff put us in a tough place. And you know, again, I feel like it's one of those manufactured things. And I'm not saying I don't know enough to say what a virus is and how to combat it and all this, but I know enough to say that it feels like post 9/11 in that way, where most people are like, yeah, that's what we're doing now. Oh, you're not doing it? And then, you know, back then nobody would be on the other side of it because there was no internet the way it is now. People weren't communicating and getting to the truth of the matter. The truth was what they said on the news. And we all fucking know now that the news is fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
So we're in a tough spot, man. And I don't know what the answer is for us to get out of it. And maybe part of the answer is what I'm doing right now. And for the longest time, I had my own business and I had people to answer to. So if I came out publicly and said my opinions on certain things, I'm sure I'd have a few parents and a few adult students saying, hey, Ryan, can we talk about this? Because I don't really agree with you on this thing or whatever. We're going to probably lose students over it. But, you know, now that I'm more of a free agent, I feel compelled to speak my piece. And I feel like we do need more people to open up and not be afraid to say things that are going to elicit a response of, what? Are you crazy? Because I never wanted to be that person who looked crazy or looked like the outsider. I just wanted to kind of fit in and just, hey, I'm one of you, you know, whatever it is. But now I just see the absurdity of some of the things that are happening to us and the loss of our liberties and freedoms and people totally changing their opinions on my body, my choice kind of stuff. And it's fucking nuts, man. And every day it gets worse, bro. As much as certain restrictions are being lifted and stuff, no, the trench is getting worn in deeper every day. It's just getting worn in deeper. And yeah, it looks like some of the restrictions are being pulled. The numbers just don't add up for them to be doing what they're doing. Initially, it was 2 weeks to make sure the hospitals don't get overloaded. And that's the only reason any of us ever said, yes, I will close my shop. 2 weeks, you know, and if it really was potentially going to overrun the hospitals, don't you think by now they'd have fucking more makeshift hospitals going up like mad? We need to build this because we're about to fucking reach that critical mass. We're not anywhere near that, dude. I don't think we ever did get anywhere. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody probably would dispute that and be like, no, the hospitals are at 90%. Like, okay, well, 90% capacity? Well, because they're a business and they have to run at 90. Otherwise, they're going to be losing money. They're going to be paying all this staff to be there and no fucking sick people. What percentage of people in the hospital right now are A, sick of COVID, or B, sick of something else, but also have COVID, you know? So there's just, the water is so muddy right now. And it's going to be hard for us to try to come to heads or tails in the first place to get to an absolute truth, let alone be able to convince people that totally uprooted their whole lives around this thing. So now when you buy something, it could be a fucking piece of shit. But once you paid $5 for it, all your friends could be like, oh, you bought a piece of shit for $5. You got ripped off. You'd be like, nah, it's fertilizer. You know, you're going to come up with all these excuses for why you did the right thing, you know, and some people have a hard time coming to the hard reality that they got ripped off and they bought a piece of shit for $5 or whatever it is, you know? So for us to get to the truth, and then convince people that they've been misled is going to be the hardest fucking thing some of us have ever done in our lives. You know, we have to find the right words, find the right actions. And I think we might be in a tricky place now because remember I said that the truth of people is not in words. The truth in people is in actions. Words can convey our intent and all that, but I don't know that. And especially now with words changing meaning and vaccination is not what it used to be, because a vaccination used to be, you can't get polio. you can't get small. You know what I mean? Now it's like you vaccinated, you got COVID. Oh, and it's like, oh, people get sick from COVID. And you know what they say? Oh, it's a good thing I got that shot because it would have been way worse. How do you know it would have been way worse? Can you fucking predict the future? It's just we're so far into this realm where I hate to, and maybe just me saying this will allow me to realize if I say it, it could be true or untrue. And words don't always have as much impact as we'd like them to have because the meanings are all fucked up and we all have a different interpretation of what the meanings are. So how are we going to use our words to convince other people of whatever we find out the truth is? And I don't think any of us have come to the truth yet. So it's going to be an uphill battle for rational people to explain to irrational people that they're acting irrationally, you know? And even then, even if we got to that place where we totally got to like COVID never happened, we still have a fucking mountain of problems that we have to do the same thing for, you know? Do I think it's possible? Yes. Do I think it would take a miracle every day for the next 1,000 years for us to make some headway? Yeah, but we got to believe in it and accept that it's possible at least, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it frustrates me because, you know, we both live in the same area. You see Yale, it is a monolith. You know, they have so much influence. They have history with influential people. Something that really affected my life when I was going to college at Gateway Community College, I ran into a guy named Amos Daly. I might have told you about him. He's a Native American dude from Arizona. And he taught me about what Skull and Bones was really up to, man, you know, and the fact that their hospital is as big as it is and that group is in that same school, it's suspicious, you know, and I've been calling it a medical malpractice industry because, you know, so many people are confused right now. And I think the best thing that we can do for people is to just kind of give them the clues to figure it out themselves and not shove it down their throat. I mean, that's what I've determined on the podcast side of things, because it's really consensual. You know, people aren't going to listen to my show unless they want to, and they can turn it off whenever. And I don't even know about it for the most part. Like we have like one or two bad reviews on Apple, and I never really give a shit. You know, it's like whatever. If you want to write a good comment, cool. I appreciate you. If not, that's fine. But it's like if that's the way things are going, I'm comfortable with that. But I also think when it comes to like being a person in the real world, because that's part of the strategy, maybe getting us all to be more comfortable on the digital world. The real world's locked down, so transvert your life into the digital world. It's been, you know, a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways. You know, having this podcast has given me the freedom to do something that's kind of in line with a lot of the things I've been curious about for so long, you know, conspiracies, spirituality, even, you know, esoteric alternative history. Been diving into that more lately because it's a lot less of a negative head rush than the COVID stuff is. But as somebody who trained martial arts, you know, I know what health is. You know, I've been sick and I've worked through, you know, a cold just by exercising, you know, or like drinking orange juice, taking some herbs, you know, the natural way. So it's just so nonsensical what's going on. And yeah, we're reaching a point where, you know, it seems like they're just trying to divide us more and more. But I'm a proponent of martial arts, man. I think it could bring us together. And I'm happy to hear that you're training and that there is a school that's open. They're not wearing masks, are they?
No.
Beautiful.
No.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. It's a wild fucking world we live in now, man. It's so many nuances that I don't fucking know, man. Wish I had the answers for you. But I guess the answer is just keep waking up every day and doing what you can to not only better yourself, but, you know, in the perfect world, you bettering yourself betters your neighbor, because your neighbor's like, yo, wow, that dude's on top of shit today, you know, and they get inspired by that, you know. It's those actions that people see you doing that they want to emulate, you know, and I think that's the best way to to spread that positivity is just be relentless in your movement. Don't ever stop moving. I feel like sometimes when I sit down, you kind of get stuck in there. There's nothing wrong with sitting and relaxing and stuff. But when we get stuck there and we turn on the TV, I can't watch TV, man. It makes me sick. Just seeing it's all going down now, man. And it's just TV is making it 1,000 times worse, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a wild world we live in, man. Fucking grateful for every day I'm still here, you know? And I guess that's part of it too. My daughter's 16, so I don't want to die before she dies, because then she's going to be here without me. Fine. But then again, I don't want her to die first, because then that means she died early, you know? So like, I just want both of us to stay as long as we can and have a healthy life. And I think so much of our health comes down to a choice, like a decision that I deserve to be healthy. And I'm a proponent for not having insurance. It's going to sound crazy to most people, but I'm okay with what happens to me. I don't think it will happen, but if I got cancer and I wound up fucking totally sick in a hospital, I'd probably be like, yeah, I guess keep me alive, you know, whatever. Or I'd be like, I guess I don't really care that much if I die. I've had a fucking amazing life. You know, I've done everything I ever wanted to do in life. Sure, there's probably a few more things I could enjoy doing. But in terms of greed, I don't want to be greedy and ask for too much out of this life. But then again, I want to stay alive. So that's why I'm doing things healthfully that are going to keep me alive, you know. But I think so much of it comes down to a decision to decide to be healthy. And I feel like things like insurance. So in Eastern philosophy, there's a reciprocation. Mark, if I gave you, I don't know, fucking flour, whatever. If I gave you a flower, in your mind, you're like, oh, he didn't have to. He gave me a flower. Whether you appreciate it or not, if you have value and you're an upstanding person, you're going to be like, I got to give something back. So there's this law of reciprocation that we have internally that it doesn't always make it to the surface. And I feel like that when we pay for insurance, that gives us the green light to go ahead and live a lifestyle that would cause us to someday want to get our money's worth out of that insurance. And it's deep seated, and most people wouldn't see it, and they'd be like, you're stupid if you don't have insurance. Well, I think the opposite. If you're paying somebody to someday, if you ever get sick, to come and help you, which chances are they're going to find an excuse to not cover you, and you're going to have to pay a freaking deductible and shit like that. It seems to me most people are paying for what they know is going to happen because they're allowing it to happen. Whereas if you said no people can have insurance anymore, people would be like, you know what, I better do everything I can health-wise to make sure I don't ever get sick, because I'm fucked if I do. And most people don't realize that. And I've come to terms with the fact that I'm going to die someday. I don't want it to happen anytime soon. I want to have a very, very long life. Well, I want to stay alive for a long time, just because I want to see what the fuck happens. I want to see how it goes down. There's people I care tremendously for, and I want to see them have a life. And if there's any way that I could help them in some way, I want to be able to help them. But nonetheless, you know, I feel like people paying monthly for insurance is assuring one thing, that they're going to need health insurance someday. And chances are I might need health insurance someday because I might get sick or fucking get hurt or whatever. I might need it someday. I might be kicking myself for not having it. But I feel like that the way the sentiment works is, I've paid you something, insurance person. Therefore, some point down the road, you're gonna give me my medical stuff that I deserve because I paid for it, you know? So, and I think that does bad for people because it gives them well, if I ever do get sick, and then when they start to think like that, they think they got a safety net underneath that. So like, I can eat shit food all day long and it doesn't matter because I got good health insurance. I'll just go and they're going to fix me. Okay, yeah, they might be able to, but the damage might already be done. And no matter what fucking health care you get, it's already too late. You lost your health, you know, one day at a time over the span of 30 years, maybe, you know? And people are like, oh, you know, sugars, the other day I was watching this segment. This doctor was talking about how bad carbs are for you, how your body responds to carbs. And he's saying anything more than a teaspoon of carbs at a time is damaging your kidneys, is damaging every cell of your body, because that's not like a natural thing for us. That's not something that our evolution, the thousands of years we've been evolving, that's not something we had. We didn't have these high fructose corn syrups and even the fruit that we have. Back in the day, we had fruit for probably like 3 or 4 months of the year, you know, and the rest of it was just eating meat and shit. And that's the other side of it. If we're eating too much meat, now our health is not going to be good too. So I'm kind of in limbo as to where I want to be in terms of my diet. But I feel like natural is better than not natural. I feel like if you can follow the Asian cuisine, which is mostly veggies, you know, I feel like you're giving yourself at least a leg up in the contest, you know. But he was saying how damaging the carbs are, you know, and I realized, like, wow, we're just poisoning ourselves every fucking day, you know, and like I said, I think it's the second leading cause of death is pretty much preventable: heart disease, diet and exercise, you know. But those are the hard but necessary things people need to understand moving forward. That if they want the most important thing in life, which is their life, they need to do the hard and necessary things, which is eat food that doesn't necessarily taste that good. And they say, are you eating to live or living to eat? If you're living to eat, you're like, oh, it's the next meal, indulgence and all this. And I don't typically eat during the day because I feel like just that separation from food allows me to go about my day without that distraction. And I, every day, make it all day long, feeling like a stomach or anything like that. I probably could go 2 or 3 days without eating, and I'd be perfectly fucking fine. Most people probably would, but you know what's getting them is their psyche saying, oh, wow, it's 12 o'clock and I didn't eat breakfast this morning. They feel their stomach rumbling and they're going, oh, that's an indication that I need to eat now. No, it is not. If that was the case, then how come sometimes after you eat, your stomach is rumbling? Doesn't make sense, you know? But nonetheless, I just think we're overfed. We're malnourished in certain ways because we don't have like real food. We got fucking bullshit food. It's not even good for us, you know, but it would take 15 years for the effects to kick in. So meanwhile, we're like, no, it's fine. I've been eating this for 15 years. I'm fine. I'm not even overweight, you know, but it has an impact. And the more we concentrate on eating healthy foods and doing those tough but necessary things, now our body's going to be healthy, but now our mind and our spirit is going to be more pure because we know we're doing what's right for us. And then we're setting that example for our friends. We're not telling them to do anything. We're saying, this is what I do. This is why I do it, you know, and I've found tremendous value in preparing my food for myself, taking the extra steps to get the food that I think is going to be the best for me, growing my own food. Because the more time you spend, energy you spend making that food, I'm going to argue that it's probably going to do a better job once it's inside of you. And if it's true what they say, that water has a memory in all of our food that we eat, everything you eat has a little water in it. Either that had its foundation and its conception in a factory where it's like jumbled around and is different from eating something that I spent time watering. I took this seed and I put it in the dirt and I cared for it and I fucking sang it a song. Now, 3 months later, I got this beautiful tomato. His next step is going to be inside of me. Now creating that change and that growth and that movement from inside of me outward, it's going to affect every cell of my body. And the more we can enjoy those moments of toughness, it wasn't easy. It wasn't super hard, but it took some mental preparation. I decided that I was worth it. I deserve to have the best food that is possible for me to have. And that's what it is, you know. But it's a wild, intricate, nuanced world we live in. And every day is exciting.
I love everything you just added to the conversation there. Because like this past week, my girlfriend signed us up for a cooking class, and we drive up to this, little like woodsy town, Woodbury, and go over to some folks' property. They got a pond, they got all these plants growing, and this like sort of wacky old man, really nice guy, teaches us about like the beginner crash course, and we're going to go back this Friday, macrobiotics. And the first thing that he said that really blew me away was like in the first 20 minutes, he starts going into how we need to balance our food. And we ate miso soup for our first lesson. So it's awesome that you brought up the Eastern connection there, because I think there's so much truth in a lot of these ancient Eastern philosophies and all of the different realms that they touch on in our lives, not just martial arts, but we learned about how you need to balance, you need to have balance. And he kind of showed us like the carrot grows down into the ground and celery grows up into the air. So those two foods together make a balance, and those are included in the miso soup. And then he had, a couple other ways, like the squash kind of grows, horizontally from the ground, and certain fruits, drop from a tree. So there's all these different kind of interesting ways to rethink your food. And you're absolutely right, dude. You got to go out of your way. Something that her and I try to do is go to farms and get food directly from the farm and support the farmers. I worked at a farmer's market for a long time and made some friendships with different farmers. And one of the things that really, really disempowered me this past year was seeing how quickly the farmer's market took a turn for the worst, and everybody was forced to wear masks, and vendors were forced to wear masks, and I was selling carbs. I was selling bread, like probably the healthiest bread you can get, but either way, wasn't great. So it's a good transition from there for me personally. But yeah, man, I think this is touching on a big reason why my family thinks I'm crazy, and I always tell them when it comes to health, I try to remind them about their diet, not to just go to a doctor whenever you have a little problem, which is the go-to instinct for the majority of my family. And they look at me like I'm bonkers for, giving up meat for the time that I did. And then, coming back to eating meat, they're kind of like, oh, so you realized you were silly being a vegan. And it's like, no. I was cleansing. Because I had these 15 years of like eating whatever was put in front of me. And then through your lessons and the hardship I went through, really grinding it out as a wrestler, becoming the captain of my wrestling team, showing up to your dojo every week, 4 or 5 times a week, training. I was thinking to myself, like, how do I do this better? Well, obviously I need to stop drinking soda. Obviously I need to stop eating chips. All of those things became like no-brainers. Okay, I saw an immediate benefit. As soon as I stopped doing that, like my training got easier, like more water. Oh, I'm not like gassing as easily, and the sweat isn't as salty. I'm feeling kind of refreshed by this, and yeah, I think, it's so important, for people out there, listen, do it with me, man. I'm saying it right now into the ether. I'm signing up. I'm going to train with Ryan, learn from Ryan again. Obviously we'll be training under the same teacher, but yeah, I'm going to do it, bro. So folks out there listening, if you're inspired by this, I'm starting all over again, so it can't hurt to try. If you've never done martial arts, if you've never pushed yourself to maybe make these changes. Obviously, if you're listening to a show like this, you kind of are thinking about making a change, so do it. I hope you do. And if you do, let us know. We got an inbox, podinbox.com/MFTIC. Hit us up, tell us what you think, and tell us what's going on in your life, because that's what I want to do here is have another conversation with Ryan in the future, because I feel like we got into a lot today, man. I don't want to hold you up for too long. I know you.
No, man, I got all day.
Yeah, well then
tell me. I got all day.
Let's go in a little deeper then on a couple things, because there was some things that you just brought up that I completely agree with. But as far as food goes, and indulgence, what are your thoughts on like healthy forms of meat? Like, I know you're not an expert on this, but like, when you do eat meat, is there anything you can recommend? Like, oh, okay, this would be what I use, and this is how frequently I eat it. Because I found a lot of benefit from bison, recently. I got this like Tonka bar stuff. I've just been eating that every now and then, and it's like this lean meat. It's really that would be my recommendation. But what do you think?
Well, kind of going back to, I believe in the placebo effect, in that as you're eating something, you got to be saying to yourself, I'm doing the right thing. This is something that's going to help my body. This is what my body needs at this moment. This is my favorite food, whatever. But I think part of the dilemma that we're in, we're so disconnected from where our food comes from. We don't have that connection to it.
Right.
So we're eating this meat that the cow had a shitty life. Saw his mom die. Fucking all these terrible things probably happened to these animals. So there could be toxins, stress toxins in that meat. There could be nuanced things about that meat that we don't have scales to read. So when we eat them, now we just put those in our bodies. Could be. I mean, I don't know that it's been proven or not, but I tend to feel like a lot of the meat that we get is it's brought to us in a brutal way, and those animals are sacrificed for us, but it didn't have to be that vile, So I feel like a lot of these farmers are onto it, grass fed. Hey, we let the cows just fucking roam around. When we kill them, we have a certain humane way that we do that, so their calves don't see, and that kind of a thing. I believe that could have an impact on us, but I think overall less meat is better but I just feel like as a nation, we're so overfed, and I think part of that comes down to, at a certain point in history, the capitalist kind of thing came in, and they decided, hey, if we get these people used to eating 3 meals a day, we'll sell more food, and it didn't hurt them at first because nobody, healthfully been impacted yet. It took years and decades to catch up to people where they are now unhealthy, and now it's getting worse because we're so far down the road from that, and again, there's probably a time where farmers used to do their thing because they wanted to give people that best food that they could produce. They wanted this meat to be amazing, not anymore. It's all about the fucking money right now, so there are companies out there, I guess, that probably take extra measures to make their animals not suffer in many ways. Well, I don't know that much about it, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think my larger point that I wanted to get out of is something you touched on, which was like the psychic and spiritual energy of the entire process, and the fact that our mind is in our gut too. It's not just up here in our brain. We think with our gut, literally. And as a martial artist, you learn to tap into your gut instincts. I think that's a big part of martial arts, is to train your response system. You're like tapping into the programming of your nervous system so that when a fight or flight situation happens, you're calm, you're able to handle it with a clear head, rather than, the average response, which is, freak out. And,
Right.
you can simulate that in training. And I think that's what's so important, is you simulate that over and over and over until you break that out of you. And then you're able to really deal with, confrontation or danger, God forbid, in a healthy and more aware way. Right. So, our mind is in our gut. We got to feed our gut right, and not be taking in that trauma from these animals, and even plants too. I mean, with the pesticides being sprayed, that's not good for them as plant beings here on the earth. Last year I was milking cows on a farm, and I drank the raw milk that farm produced, and it was the best milk I ever had in my life, and it was probably 10 times more nutritious than the hood and Gaida milk that I drank when I was a kid, the Gitas and hood milk. You could buy it at a gas station. I don't think that's a good indicator of quality if it's available at a gas station, So, yeah, milk really is a big, red flag for me, because why is raw milk illegal? Right? It's illegal. It just doesn't make sense. Like something that people have been eating and drinking for thousands of years becomes illegal. You know, I just, that was a really big eye opener for me.
Yeah, I guess the right thing would say there is a possibility that you could get fucking whatever infection from this milk. Just so everybody knows, it's your choice whether you want to drink it or not. You know, but instead they just say, no, you can't. And now us freedom loving people, we're like, nah, fuck that. Now I want it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the right avenue either, because, you know, I find that when somebody pushes me, like there's a problem here, you know, there's a big problem here. Why is this person trying so hard to get me to fucking whatever it is, you know? And I don't like that about it, you know, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that was kind of like a synchronicity and a connection that came up is when I went to this macrobiotics class, this old man who offhand mentioned that he worked in the NSA, which I was like, oh, cool, great. you know, I didn't really dig too deep into that, but he's a patriotic kind of guy too. So it's interesting. There's more to the story. We'll find out after I go to his house again this Friday. But, you know, that's a tangent. Really, like he goes, oh, and before you leave, go in the garden and grab some weed. So I'm like, okay, great. Never going to turn down an opportunity to get free weed. And the reason I bring this up is because, you know, nowadays pot is so strong. It's so overdosed. You know, you're talking about potency levels of like 23% THC, and that's an average, and you can reach up to like 30% THC. I'm telling you, Ryan, I smoked some of this like hippie, you know, brown weed that he had, and it's made me so mellow. I've smoked once a day. I went from smoking 3 times a day to smoking once a day with this kind of more swaggy looking brown weed. And I found like what you were saying about overindulge is kind of dawning on me now. It's like maybe that's what's happening. I had this overload and it was making me want to keep smoking because there was just potency. And then when I take this like kind of break of not having bud and then smoking this swaggy bud, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I can kind of have some moderation here. And I really want to roll that into the rest of my life and let it be a sort of tool of manifestation, you know, because when one thing is kind of going a good way, you can almost bleed that energy into other aspects, which is why this is becoming so exciting, the prospect of getting back into martial arts and actually not just saying it this time. When I was your student, we definitely didn't smoke together. Cool to not like, I don't know, maybe I was too scared to bring that up, and it was interesting to find out that we were both kind of smoking weed but never really like touched on that until after I had stopped being a student of yours. You know, I don't know if you remember too much about that. I think maybe we smoked that one time together, but for the most part, when I was a student of yours, that was not a part of our relationship at all. You know, I think that was good for me ultimately. Yeah, I just tried to maintain a level of professionalism. Right, of course. But I always like to smoke. I don't know why. And I'm continually trying to learn about why I smoke as much as I smoke. And when I say that, I don't even smoke that much. I'm like a one hit, good for like half the day at least, you know? And it's still a time where I smoke more too or whatever, but usually that's the case. But I don't want to bring that into anybody else's, because I know the way it was introduced to me. And I believe part of the reason why I smoke as much as I do is because at a young age, we found out that my father smoked weed. We found a bowl in his car and I didn't really know anything about it, but that planted the seed. I'm like a 6-year-old kid. I find out my dad smokes weed, whatever, you know. And then as we got a little bit older, my older brother was smoking weed a bunch, so I just started smoking too. And that fit my persona of who I thought I was, you know, oh, maybe kind of like my dad, you know, and maybe I think my uncle smokes, and, you know, it seems like a cool thing to do. It doesn't really hurt anybody. But at the end of the day, I'm wondering, why am I so married to this fucking Mary Jane?
So there have been times where I've gone a year or so without smoking weed, but I always come back to it for some reason. And I'm wondering if there can come a time where, and I don't want to say I need it, because I kind of feel like I want it. I don't really need it, but I want it. But I wonder if there's a time where I come up where I just hang it up. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go probably 6 months without it and then see how I feel after that. Because you know what happens after 6 months? You're like, I don't even know why I ever fucking smoked in the first place. I feel great, I feel totally great. But if you go your first day, you're like, something's not right about today. And what is it? You didn't smoke. It's just not the same, So I continually find excuses that I should smoke, but there's no excuses why I shouldn't smoke. There used to be excuses of like, oh, I got to go teach a class, or I got to talk to this parent, or so on and so forth, so I wouldn't smoke, but it's definitely, I'm still learning about my relationship with it, how it got implanted into my life and why it's such a big part of my life. And I don't want to discredit my experiences with weed, because I got to say, freaking most of my last 20 years, all the cool things that I've done, I've been a little high during it, and I'm not like most people, I guess, in that a lot of people will smoke and they'll sit around. As soon as I smoke, Mark, shoom, 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 it's like I'm on fucking crack. Not that I know what that feels like, but I get so much energy because I'm able to see my life from an outside perspective. I'm no longer so in it. It's an outside saying, oh, what the hell is Ryan doing? What the fuck is he doing sitting there wasting his time? He's got this he should be doing and this, and he should get organized and he should get clean and, all these things. So instead of just sitting there being like, oh, I should do this, I should do this. No, I want to get it done and get it off my list. I want to lift myself up, because then when I lift myself up, I can lift the other people around me up as well. And maybe that's me like cleaning something or organizing or fixing or learning about something or working in the garden or just working out in the yard or just spending time with other people, But there was a while where I was embarrassed that I smoked weed, and I was a closet smoker, I still am pretty much a closet. I don't smoke with anybody. I never smoke with other people. Once in a blue moon with my girlfriend, but I don't smoke with weed with people because it's a different me. It's not the true me. It's a different story. I smoked a little bit of weed an hour ago or half hour ago, and now we're hanging out having a conversation. That's me. But if we just took a hit and I'm starting to feel high, I'm going to say things that I wouldn't normally say, So I try to avoid getting intoxicated from weed when I'm around other people, because they're going to have that overall impression of me. And I'm not scared of whether they're going to judge me or not. There was a time where I wanted to be a closet smoker because I didn't want people to know I smoke weed, because I worked with kids and I don't want people to think I'm a fucking pothead. And if I forget something, I don't want them to be like, oh, I forgot because he's high all the time and he just fucking forgets everything because he's high. In most cases, I'm really on top of shit. I'm pretty coherent for the most part. But yeah, I've been a closet smoker, and now that it's a lot more acceptable, I'm not so concerned about it anymore or anything like that. But I still don't want to impose my preferences to smoke weed on anybody else, because now you're a young guy coming in to hang out with me and learn from me at 17, and you're like, yeah, this dude smokes weed too, man. Weed is great. And then, yeah, there's nothing wrong with weed, but I don't think that needs to be part of my influence on you. If you want to do that for you, that's cool, man. But now I'm learning that I was influenced, that it's a great thing from my dad, and maybe he didn't even enjoy it or whatever. He's just hooked on it too, and I don't believe that weed is not addictive. It's not addictive like other things are addictive, but the habit is addictive. Right. The feeling of that is like you just get comfortable and you get so used to doing it. And it feels good. There's no doubt about it. But I want to say it's slightly unnecessary. I think there's ways that we can tap into our third eye that don't involve any toxicants at all, and there's nothing wrong with it. And there's probably times where it will help you tap into that. But I feel like for me, my next step is taking some time off and not smoking, just because I want to get a grasp on that. I want to be able to not have that. I want to call it a crutch. I want to be able to still have the same function that I've had without that, for no other reason than I want control.
Right.
And it's neither here nor there for the most part, but it's just something that I keep coming back to. It's like one of these days I'm just going to quit smoking weed, not because I hate it or anything like that. It's just because I need to move to the next plane, and my next plane spiritually may be something that I can't get to if I am intoxicated in certain ways. I just need to purify myself and come back to a need for pretty much nothing. That's what I want to get to. I don't need fucking heat. I don't need electricity. I don't even need food. I could survive for maybe a week without food, something like that, where there's less stress about getting those comforts that I need. It's just like, hey, I'm free now. I'm way more free than I used to be, It's just shedding the layers of unneeded attributes of myself.
You're reminding me of like somebody who's had like a near-death experience. Not that you have, but like that seems like maybe you have, I don't know, but like that seems like the revelation that you're missing. Like people take that moment of like, oh my God, all the things I are taking for granted. It seems like that's like part of your everyday psychology, is to be on that level already. So I wonder, what your experience is with the other world, because you mentioned, wanting to open your third eye without the help of a plant, So what do you think, like, as far as spiritual practices goes? Have you explored any of that? I know you're obviously a yoga practitioner at the least. You had, yoga classes, you were a participant in that, and that's a big part of who you are. But martial arts is spiritual. Can you elaborate?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because, I think one of the greatest lessons I've learned from yoga is breathing. How breathing can get us there. One yoga class that I was in, we were doing breath work from, I believe it's called Kundalini. Nonetheless, it's just fluctuating your breathing. So it's sometimes breathing like exasperating, like tremendously that. And then sometimes it's like breathing in and holding it. And then sometimes it's breathing out and holding it. But nonetheless, the fluctuations in oxygen level get you so fucking high that I think the average person can get, balls out crazy high just from these breathing exercises. And I got to say, possibly one of the highest I've ever been was in a yoga class. Not because I smoked. I may have smoked like a few hours before the yoga class, but it was the breath work that we did, the fact that I was closing my eyes and I journeyed to another world just through my breathing exercises. And it was fucking fantastic, man. And, I keep forgetting to do that. I keep forgetting to do that. And I need to do that. I think the average person would benefit from just a few minutes of breathing exercises every day, just in terms of being able to cope with nonsense and everything. And I think that's one of the fundamental aspects of our life, is what we eat, what we breathe. These are parts of us now. Every molecule of oxygen that we take in has an opportunity to be part of us for some small time. And every oxygen, as far as I know, has a little bit of water in it. So going back to the possibility that all water has a memory, and then also, are there certain life forms attached in that water that are reading my messages, and once they get inside of me, they're going, get to it, let's do it. And it's like, you got this whole fucking team on your side now. And water is another thing that I've been focusing on a lot. You're probably somebody who would agree with me in that we don't need fluoride in our water to help our teeth clean. That's why we brush our teeth, if we choose to brush our teeth. No amount of water that I can drink will help my teeth. I'm pretty sure of that. And even if it could, I probably would still choose not to drink it, just for the possibility that it was doing something damaging to me. So I drink distilled water almost exclusively now, just because I don't feel like I want to risk it. Why would you risk it? Maybe it doesn't do anything to you, but why would I risk it? I'm already dumb as fuck. I'm dumb as it is. I don't need fluoride to push me over the edge that way. But again, that comes back to like spending energy and spending time and putting thought into what you are ingesting. and being okay with that, knowing that I've given myself the greatest possible chance to be healthy by spending time to either whether it means I have to go buy distilled water, which I don't really like doing because it comes in a plastic container, and you probably know about the EVAs or whatever it is that might be leaching into it. So I have to switch back to using, and then I'll be feeling much better about what I drink again, but it's just
spring water. Is there, because I mean, I'm no stranger to fluoride. We just did an episode like 2 weeks ago, all into the hidden aspects of the element fluorine, which is pretty much what fluoride is, sodium fluoride. And it's the most reactive chemical in the whole periodic table of elements. If it wasn't for fluorine, we wouldn't have nuclear weapons. We wouldn't have any sort of explosives. It's incredible that this extremely reactive element is also recommended to help your teeth, when if you put it with any of the minerals that are actually in your teeth, it would just erode them. Like if you did that in a petri dish, you're not going to have a healthier tooth. Fluorine is an absolute, reactive, terrible thing. But either way, have you tried spring water?
I have. Just going back to the fluoride for a second, just a quick side is that I remember as a kid, it's fine. You get it in your mouth, but don't fucking eat it. How come you don't want me to eat it? The fluoride. I'm like, wait a minute, but we drink fluoride in our water? This is not making sense to me. Somebody please explain. Maybe it's the levels are different, like the levels in water maybe down here, the levels in toothpaste up here, something like that. I really don't know. But from what I know, and every company is probably a little bit different about spring water is sometimes just tap water that they call spring water, and they put it in a bottle for you and charge you double for it because they call it spring water or whatever. Because from what I understand, Coca-Cola, I believe, or Nestle, what they do is they'll buy up property in a town, and they'll tap into that town's water source and bottle it. And sometimes that town's water source is already fluoridated. So as far as I know, spring water is not like 100% always spring water. It could be in some cases. Some companies are probably diligent. I sort of doubt it, but some companies might be diligent to that. Hey, this is just right from that mountain right over there. You know what I mean? Which doesn't necessarily mean it's good drinking water. Because it could be, I'm sure they test it for levels and things like that, but I also think they probably have to put chlorine in it to make sure it's not having any of that bacteria, that bad bacteria, because then they could be liable for somebody who got sick from it. So We're walking a tightrope of being scientific and making sure we're not going to get sick and die prematurely because we just did something dumb that fucking anybody could have told you not to fucking drink that water. You know what I mean? And then also trying to prevent the possible negative side effects that would come from drinking chloridated or fluoridated water, so we're might not really be totally sure as to what we're drinking. That's why I take it into my own hands to make my distilled water. Because when you distill water, what it does is it boils water in a closed container. So the water that turns into vapor collects on the top of that, runs off. And that what you're getting is 100% pure water. No minerals, no microbes, nothing in it, just 100% water. So that's why I feel like if I could do myself a solid and put in the extra work to make sure I have good, pure drinking water, I feel like that's going to encourage my body to get rid of any of the toxins that may have accumulated,
Right on.
And then also that component of deep down inside my brain, I have to remember to, every chance I get, do what's best for me. Even if it means taking a couple extra steps, I just got to do it because I need to hold on to the most important thing in my life, which is my health. Because without my health, I don't have a life. Right. And then I can't touch other people's lives too. So it's a very interesting element to that. But that's just my take on it. And
well, it sounds, I'll say, I've talked to a lot of people on the show so far. It's probably be like episode 92, 93, around there. And obviously, you're resonating really deeply with this Taoist monk that I spoke to. His name is David Way. It was really far back, episode 26. And I was asking him, like, well, what do you do when your family is like maybe not? He's like, I just lead by example. They do their thing, I do mine. And if they see that what I'm doing for me works, then they ask about it. But if they don't, I don't push them to change their life. And I thought that was like, a little new to me, also not so new, but brilliant the way he said it. And it's very in concert with what you're telling me now, man. It's like, you got to do for you before you do for others, and lead by example, and
Yep.
You've been a huge example in my life. And I can already tell you're like made for this type of thing. So I definitely want to invite you back on the show if you're willing. And I definitely want to
Any
have
day.
Awesome. I want to do it where maybe you and I can have another person on and talk to them and see who we can get on the show. So, yeah, Ryan.
Sounds good.
This has been fun, dude. I really, really cherish, having the opportunity, obviously, to present your knowledge to my audience, because as small as the audience is right now, like, we're growing and we're going to be probably in the top 5 podcasts. And it's because of the determination that you taught me, Ryan. So
Nice.
just putting it out there like Babe Ruth calling his shots, you know what I'm saying? So, and that's it, folks. Ryan Griffith, he doesn't have anything to plug yet, but he's my Sifu. And
I'm going to plug every person on this planet who's listening to this, because they deserve the absolute best. They'll fucking argue with me over that, and they can argue, and I probably won't argue back, but I will tell them that I believe that they deserve the best, just like you deserve the best for you. I deserve the best for me. And man, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to voice my opinions and to have a platform. Man, it's been awesome. Been great. Always had great experiences with you. Always pleasure. Every time I saw you coming through the door, I'd be like, cool, Mark's here. And I knew in some ways it was going to present a challenge, just in terms of like where the rubber meets the road in terms of martial arts, because you have such great stature and you have great attributes. And it was always a challenge for me to deal with your stature, but in terms of your person, I'm very thankful to have had the opportunity to be impact in your life and to be a part of your journey.
Thank you, man.
So thank you.
Well, it's only midway through, and the same is true for you, brother. We might not be the same age, but we're living in the now. And yeah, thank you for presenting such awesome jewels of wisdom here in the moment. And for that, folks, thank you for listening to My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast. Enjoy the moment wherever you are in the now. Don't you just love that? Two folks who've known each other for so long getting together for the first time in a long time. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with my Sifu, Ryan Griffith. And you heard me, folks. I made the commitment. I said I'm going to go back to MMA class. I'm going to start training again. And that's not going to be free, so go over to the Patreon. Patreon.com/MFTIC and help me out. Right now we're at 26 patrons. Shout out to Jacob Arthur who just joined. Only 7 more will be at lucky number 33, or maybe unlucky depending on your perspective. And speaking of perspectives, I plan on giving you my perspective on a whole number of books in my library. I've been getting all kinds of requests for book recommendations from folks, so I figured why not just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I'm stoned, so to speak. But yeah, I want to show you guys some of the things that I have in my book collection and make it worth my time. So if it's worth your time to get some good book recommendations, sign up for the Patreon for only $2. You can get 50 definitely more than 50 now, bonus episodes, and yeah, we're doing it for Philosophorum, the Elemental Philosophorum that's going to be exclusively on Patreon. And then, Mike and I, your handbook for the apocalypse. We're doing content there that you're only going to be able to find on Patreon. So pretty soon I'm going to be putting a lot of work into the Patreon, especially considering that my lady and I have our sights on a new HQ. So help us settle in and sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/MFTIC. And if Patreon's not your thing, go over to the PayPal. Show me some love on PayPal and I'll work something out with you. We got our PayPal on myfamilythinksimcrazy.com. And there's other ways to support. If you're on Rockfin, we'll be putting more content on Rockfin. And get in touch with me at mfticpodcast@gmail.com and let me know. If you want to see more stuff on Rockfin, if you're on Rockfin already, let me know. All right, this is all new to me. This is an experiment in real time. Thank you for being here, folks. Enjoy the moment wherever you are in the now.